Podcasting, the final frontier. This is the Hammer Podcast. Its 30-minute mission: to rehash geeky topics, to seek out new bastions of nerdiness, to timidly go where the more talented have gone before.
Greetings, and welcome to the Hammer Podcast, the official podcast of thehammerstrikes.com. I'm your host, Gene Hendricks, and yes, as you've guessed, the intermittent schedule of the show continues. However, we do have a new episode for you tonight, and it's going to be a pretty interesting conversation. But first, we have some listener feedback to go through. Our first email comes from Kirk Greenfield, the host of the Imperious Rex Confessions of a Serial Surface Invader podcast, and he writes, "Just finished listening to the two-part Generations series podcast and enjoyed the review very much. I picked up several of these in the cut rate bins of a local Comic-Con after they'd come out. I didn't recall seeing or hearing much about them at all, so to find them at half cover price was a real bargain at the time. Don't recall if I got them all, but do remember attempting to pick up both Generations and Generations 2. Thanks for the great show." Well, thank you very much, Kirk. Yeah, that was a fun conversation with Mike. The interesting thing is, I didn't expect it to go quite as long as it did, although you would think that by now I would know what was going on as far as getting involved in geek talk with stuff like that, especially, John Byrne, Superman, and Batman with Michael Bailey. Yeah, that's going to go on for a little while. But I'm glad you enjoyed it. I've been hearing some good feedback on that. I do want to get to Generations 2. Mike is interested in that, but I've been told that Scott Gardner will murder me if he is not on that show. So it's going to be interesting trying to find a time that we can all do it. But I do want to get to it, just I don't know when. Well, our next email comes from Mr. Luke Giaconetti. He of Earth Destruction Directive, The Vault of Startling Monster Horror Tales of Terror, and the fairly new, as of this recording, Get Back to the Wrestling podcast. And he's writing in on Jaws 2. So he says, "My best memory of Jaws 2 is a strange story involving my brother, pro wrestling, and AOL Instant Messenger. Stick with me. So while I was in college in South Carolina, my brother was in college up in New York. And we would usually burn up AIM, that's America Online Instant Messenger for those of you younger than 30, talking about wrestling during the broadcasts of the multiple weekly then WWF and WCW broadcasts. One such show was WCW Thunder, which, if I am remembering my timing right, was at the time airing on Thursdays on TBS from 8 to 10. So while we were watching Thunder, some 800 plus miles apart, and talking about it on AIM, after Thunder, the next program on TBS was Jaws 2. So we kept right on rolling discussing Jaws 2. The beginning of the film, with the explosion and the shark getting burned, prompted me to say, "Whoa, Pyro Shark!" To which Jason replied, "Pyro Shark sounds like a tag team." And I returned with dorsal fin, bite radius, the Pyro Sharks. And thus was born the Pyro Sharks, a masked tag team which we have used in various fantasy wrestling federations since, with the gimmick being that they are our normal characters wearing masks. A fact which everyone is aware of, but the Sharks deny vehemently, of course. I have not seen Jaws 2 in many years, but I will always put it over as having inspired the Pyro Sharks. As such, it was great fun to hear you and Paul discussing the movie, which is loads better than most of the Jaws ripoffs, and worth watching even if it's not much of a threat to the original. Thanks for the great episode, and hopefully we hear more soon." Well, yes, Luke, you're hearing more right now. In fact, that Jaws one took quite a while, or Jaws 2 one, took quite a while for me to get out simply because of the schedule, and as you can tell, it's been a little while since I got that episode out, and here we are on the next one. So apologies to those of you listening in the far-flung future where there was no interruption. But, this is life. Everyone who is a podcaster knows family comes before the hobby. So I'm going to try and get as many things in as I can when time permits. Luckily, the turnaround on this particular episode was actually fairly quick, so hopefully we can do that in the future. Part of that is due to me not doing a whole bunch of editing. I'm cutting out the before on-air talk and after on-air talk, making sure the levels work out all right, and that's pretty much it. I'm not going to go into the whole ums and ahs and silences just because that just takes too long. I'm sorry, the quality may be down a little bit, but I can't really do it and turn the episode over in a decent amount of time. So we're just going to have to go on with what we got, and I think it's still a very interesting episode. I hope you all enjoy it. Catch you after the break.
Hey there, I'm Nathaniel with some exciting news about the Punch Like a Girl podcast. Oh, hey Liz, I'm just doing the promo. Tell the people about how the podcast we do together covering graphic novels and trade collections starring female protagonists is moving to, and actually I'm mansplaining again, aren't I? Uh-huh. Well, I can just here you go.
Punch Like a Girl is joining the Fire and Water Network, and as of October will be found on the network feed and at fireandwaterpodcast.com.
Is it okay if I just invite folks to join us in celebrating the girls who kick butt?
I think you already did.
Yes! Nailed it!
Don't worry, folks. I'll keep him in line.
And welcome back. And I have a very special guest with me today. Someone who is... This is not her first podcast, but is the first fun podcast, from her definition. Miss Vera Wild. How are you tonight?
I am doing great. I was really excited when you asked me to be on.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to get more outside of what I normally talk about, which is comics, TV, stuff like that. And so the topic we're going to be tackling tonight is going to be that of cosplay. And having just gotten back from a convention, I can tell you the art of cosplay is alive and well.
Oh, most certainly. I like how you're only baby stepping away from other stuff, though, because instead of talking about movies, comics, or TV, you're talking about people dressing like characters from movies, comics, or TV.
Yeah, well, I'm not quite as bold as some people, so I'm just easing my way into it.
Fair enough.
Now, one thing that we probably need to talk about is what is cosplay? I mean, you could say that any child going out on Halloween is doing cosplay, really. Or you could go so far as to say that it has, cosplay has to be screen accurate. You have to be in character, things of that nature. So that's kind of the two extremes. Vera, when someone says cosplay to you, what immediately jumps to mind?
I mean, if you're using that term specifically, my brain is going to go towards conventions more often than not, because that's where you hear the term bandied about. But as far as trying to define it, I can't come up with anything that's particularly rigid, and any definition that I would come up with honestly would include stuff like Halloween costumes or whatever people throw together for a Renaissance fair, which also means that it can include, things that are from real life and not even exclusively from fiction. If you're talking broad strokes, what you see most often, if someone is to use that term, is they are in some way recreating a character from a piece of fiction. Now, whether or not you want to limit it to screen or page accurate, that's usually when you start. I never get hung up on that because that's kind of gatekeeping in my mind. But some people, there are definitely people out there who take accuracy very, very seriously.
Yeah, I've seen that. And, there are some instances where that is really, really nice to see. For example, the convention that we just came from, Zenkai-Con, which is an anime and manga convention that was held in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. There was, I would say, all ranges there, to the point where we even saw one guy who was dressed in, I don't know how familiar you would be with this anime, High School DxD.
That one I don't know.
Okay. The main character in it is, I would say, possessed by the spirit of, they refer to it as the Red Dragon Emperor. And so he is able to tap into those powers, and one of the things he can do is create a suit of red armor on himself. And there was one guy there dressed in that armor. And you could tell that this was homemade, because there were some gaps like around the eyes and things like that. But you could also tell he was extremely passionate about that character and went to great lengths to create this armor. So it may not be 100% accurate. It may not have cost thousands of dollars to do, but it looked great. He had fun wearing it and posing for a picture for me. And it showed his commitment to that anime and that character. And as far as I'm concerned, you're having fun. It looks all right. Go for it. That's the perfect idea of cosplay for me.
And for me, too, the thing is, I can appreciate the effort that goes into screen accurate, especially if you're going for something that isn't a live action thing, like if you're going screen accurate for an anime or a video game. I can certainly appreciate that, but I always get way more enjoyment out of people who do something that's a little bit of their own spin on it. I mean, in case people hadn't already picked up just from hearing my voice, you referred to me as she, which I thank you. I do appreciate. I was assigned male at birth, and I consider myself to be gender fluid. So I really enjoy crossplay, which is people, portraying characters of the gender of which they don't normally present. I really enjoy people who will take a character who has had many iterations and like mix and match pieces. I love when people do steampunk takes on characters that, in that particular look might not have a precedent in the work itself. That's the kind of cosplay that really gets me excited personally.
Yeah, something creative like that. And I believe I told you as we were leading up to this recording that one of the best conversations I ever saw at a convention, and this was at Atlantic City Boardwalk Con, where two True Freaks had a table. So we were sitting there, and, people come by, hi, how are you? Here's a flyer, this is what we do, stuff like that. And it was a comic book convention, therefore there were a lot of comic book costumes. And the best interaction of the weekend was a female Harley Quinn and a male Joker walking around, and she was dressed like from the Arkham Asylum games. So the video game version of Harley Quinn. And coming the other way was a male Harley Quinn dressed in the Margot Robbie version. But this wasn't a guy who was trying to look feminine. He was just, Harley Quinn's his favorite character. He was built more or less like me, full beard, had a giant hammer on his shoulder, and the two locked eyes, the two Harley Quinns locked eyes, and they were going back and forth about which one of them should take the Joker back to their room. And they were in character the whole time. I couldn't help but just stare at it and just absorb the moment. It was hilarious. It was very well done on both sides. Neither of them were professional costumes, but they were having a great time with the interaction, and they parted, very well. And I think everyone around them had a great time. And so, crossplay or being inventive in that nature is perfectly fine. And if you're doing crossplay, you don't have to try and emulate the gender. You just say, oh, well, hey, It's like if I was going out and said, one of my favorite characters is Vixen. I'm going to dress up as Vixen. What the heck? I'll dress up, make it look like Vixen, but for me. And that counts.
It does, and certainly some of my favorite cosplays I've seen in the last couple of years have been. Mostly it was women doing male characters, but they're not trying to pass off as male. So I saw a couple of years ago at Vermont Comic Con, I saw a female Captain America and a female Hellboy.
Oh, cool!
Which was very cool. That was an elaborate one too. I think she was part of like a really organized cosplay group because she was traveling with a guy in Hulkbuster armor and somebody who had done a ridiculously accurate Big Daddy from BioShock.
Oh, cool.
But I really do enjoy that kind of stuff. Or another thing that I enjoy on the few occasions that I've done cosplay myself is I really do enjoy posing with someone who has done the same character but in a different way.
Oh, all right.
My first time going to a convention in cosplay, I did Wonder Woman, and every other Wonder Woman I could come across, I got a selfie with. I had a blast doing that.
Yeah, there was one Wonder Woman that we saw. But she was the old retired Wonder Woman. So she had a cane, and the lady doing it was not, a senior citizen, but she was playing a senior citizen. She had the gray wig, she had a cane, she was going around, she had, a piece of toilet paper stuck to her boot, and she was just having a good time being this, old crotchety Wonder Woman, and, we had fun interacting with her, and I think, like you said, I think everyone that saw her just wanted a selfie with her. It was great.
That is always a lot of fun. I want to ask, because I don't think we even compared these. Have you actually cosplayed for these things?
Technically, yes.
I want to hear how we get away with just technically.
Well, I'm a big Star Trek fan, to the point of the Star Trek fan club that I was involved in for many years, and my wife was involved in as well. We made our own fan episodes. So we would go to conventions dressed as our characters. So
you were in uniform. What era was your fan show set in? Because you are not the first person I've known who's made their own fan Star Trek series.
We were set after the beginning of Star Trek Generations, so after Kirk disappears in the Nexus.
Okay.
After that and before Next Gen. So we were in the Monster Maroons. I was the chief engineer, so I was able to wear the vest, the Scotty vest, for most of it, which is a heck of a lot more comfortable. But we were trying to bridge the gap. So if you were on the ship, you could use your comm badge, because that just connected to the ship's intercom. But if you were on a planet, you needed a handheld communicator. So we're baby steps. That's one I do, apparently, is baby steps there. So we would go to conventions to promote ourselves, and we would be in the Monster Maroon uniforms. But whereas most people would have, I am Captain so-and-so, I'm Commander. I was a Lieutenant Commander, because that's what my character was. I had the badge and everything. I believe that is the only time I've gone to a convention in costume. I've done, Halloween parties and things of that nature. Oh, no, I'm wrong. The same club for the Return of the King, when that came out, we would do a lot of promotions at movie theaters. So the movie theater would let us see the movie for free and let us set up in the lobby, because we were dressed up. So I wasn't any particular character. I was just a ranger. So I had my sword belt, my tunic, cloak, whatever. So I was just a ranger. Our one friend she called herself Gimli's wife. But she had a beard on, but it had a pink bow in it.
I was gonna say, please tell me she had a beard. That's great.
Yes.
I love that.
So I've done things of that nature. I've never gone to a convention as like Superman or the Flash, or basically I avoid tights whenever possible. Just not my body type, you know?
No, and that's fair.
And let me put this out there. If someone of my body type is wearing tights, I'm not turned off by that. I actually admire their bravery. Because you get these people out there that say, oh, well, you know, you can only do this cosplay because you look like that. No. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, no, that is worth bringing up, because there are certainly... it's something that comes up with crossplay sometimes, a little bit less so, because I think folks who are transgender or otherwise not non-gender conforming, I'm not going to say are getting more acceptance, but people are iffy about hassling them at this point, because at the very least they seem to realize that's a bad look. However, you do still get people hassling cosplayers who are, to put it bluntly, heavier than the characters they portray, which is awful that they get hassled, because they have just as much right to portray that character as anybody.
Yeah, I agree. And sometimes you'll have the people that embrace it. Like, if you have a guy that wants to cosplay as the Flash, who's on the heftier side, brings a bucket of chicken with him, you know? But that's them accepting it and making a joke. But even if they're not, who cares? They're having a good time. It's not like DC or Marvel or Disney or Warner Brothers is coming down on them and saying, no, we own this character, it can only be done of this body type. It's like you were saying before, it's gatekeeping. It's you trying to tell somebody else what they can do with a character that you don't own.
Yeah. Yeah, and that sort of stuff, is just a shame. And I don't have as much grounding to sort of say too much about this, but I'll bring it up as well, because otherwise I'd feel weird not mentioning it. It unfortunately does happen with race as well. Annoyingly, usually when a non-white cosplayer wants to cosplay a white character, you will get some degree of hassling, usually in the form of somebody posting BS comments on a message board, because by and large these sorts of people won't say these things in public usually, but that happens as well, which is also unfortunate. I remember reading an article, I think about a year ago, from a black cosplayer who loves anime, but there are very few black characters in anime. And so she just cosplays whoever she wanted, but she'd get hassled a lot by people who said she shouldn't be playing that character.
Well, if you want to go that far, then anyone who's in Japanese shouldn't be playing those characters.
Well, unfortunately, that sparks a whole other debate, because anytime you bring that up, there is unfortunately a rather large number of people who will get into an argument as to whether or not all characters in anime are actually intended to be Japanese or not in the first place, which is a completely separate thing. But skin color, that's a much easier line in the sand for folks to draw.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's been that way for many, many centuries.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if you're willing to put the time and the effort into it, and it doesn't have to be a super amount of time and effort. You know, it could be as little as going to the local costume store and buying one of those costumes in a bag thing and going out like that. That you've put some money and some effort into it, and you are putting yourself out there in that outfit, and most people are going to look at you and say, hey, good job. I'm glad to see you here. I mean, there was one at this most recent convention that it was, I don't know if it was gender, race, whatever, because it was a full head-to-toe suit, dressed as a nine-tailed fox. which was really interesting. It was an orange suit, and walked by me. I'm looking, I'm like, oh, it's a nine-tailed fox. And they turned around. I said, oh, I'm sorry, I was just counting. Because I was counting the tails. Because
they caught you looking at their backside.
Yes. But that's something that shows up a lot in anime and manga as a powerful spirit. So I was like, oh, wow. Someone actually decided to do that. That's wonderful. And it wasn't a super elaborate costume. It was just a fox costume that they put eight more tails on. It was fine. It looked great.
It's funny how some folks get into it, because I actually only started going to like conventions to do cosplay in the last couple of years. The first like attempt at anything close to an accurate costume that wasn't just taking my kid out for Halloween was actually stuff that I put together for burlesque shows, because I perform as a burlesque performer. So one of my earlier numbers after I moved to Vermont was a Doctor Who number where I was the 11th Doctor, who was the Matt Smith, because he was the actor in the role at the time, and I had a number where I regenerated into a woman. So obviously I called that, and I totally deserve a residual check. But actually a fair amount of stuff that I would consider to be cosplay, I either did originally or only in burlesque numbers. That was how I originally ended up doing Wonder Woman. I did Poison Ivy that way. That my Harley Quinn was a burlesque number. I'm really proud of this one for its obscurity. I did Janine Melnitz from Ghostbusters, but hold on, not the film, the cartoon.
So the bright red-headed Janine.
The bright redhead, huge poof in the front, big bulky jewelry, the yellow top with the orange skirt, yellow heels. Yeah, that one.
Nice.
More recently, though, I've started to get into, and this is something that I've always kind of appreciated, but sort of didn't have the confidence to do, because I think in some ways it's almost more of a safety net to be doing like an actual character that exists. But I've started to do stuff that is, well, I'm just this kind of thing, but I'm not doing anyone specific. So along those lines, I've been a Slytherin.
Okay.
Which is my house. That is my Hogwarts house. But I'm not being anyone specific, partly because I'm not going to dye my hair blonde to play the only named Slytherins that anyone knows. But I've got the tie, and I have some Slytherin earrings, and I've got a wand. Recently, I had a Sith robes, and I did. I sort of a pale makeup with some black line designs on it. So I was a Sith. I was a dark Jedi, but I wasn't being a specific one. And I've really started to enjoy this, finding a category of something and being my own thing within that, which in a way is a bit what you did with, your Starfleet post. People knew, what you were referencing, but you got to be your own thing a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that gives you a bit more freedom, because you're not locked down to, oh, well, I need to act this way. I need to look exactly like this. I have to have, the scar right here on my forehead. Which I do, but that's a whole other story. But you can create your own thing. So someone, like, let's say, going back to Star Trek, you see someone in a Starfleet uniform, and they've got a visor on, but they've also got pointed ears. Okay, well, it's a blind Vulcan. Great. It's not anything a specific character, but you know exactly just by looking at it as, okay, that's in this category. And things like Harry Potter, Star Trek, Star Wars, you get, I think, a little more of a broad brush you can paint with there because you have these groups involved. It's not like superhero comics. You don't really have that so much because you have the main heroes. They're not, any group is made up of individual heroes. You know, it's not. The one that I can think of that might work would be Code Blue, which was a sub-story running in the Tom DeFalco, Ron Friend's Thor comics. And it was the New York Police Department's superhero response team. So you had specific characters in that group, but if you just walked in with like a police uniform that said Code Blue on it, there you go. You're a member of that team.
There you go. Yeah, it is funny with comics because you want everyone to have a really distinct look so they can be picked out of group shot real easily. Mm-hmm. Like maybe for certain eras, you can throw together what could pass for a generic X-Men outfit. S.H.I.E.L.D. has had kind of a generic agent look for a while. But yeah, not a whole lot in those areas. It's more something you run into with other forms of fiction, I think.
Yeah, anything that you have like a general group of things, like an army or something of an army and navy, something that would have a uniform that you can then riff off of.
An army, a navy, a Borg.
Yes.
I've seen more than a few great Borg cosplays.
Yeah, my wife, she reminds me every now and again about the Borg costume she saw at her first Star Trek convention. Because, yes, my wife is as big a geek as I am. And
good on you.
She said that it was an amazing costume, screen perfect, you know, even had the little laser pointer over the eye, but obviously had some issues with adjustment because had 2 white handprints right on the butt. So I got done putting the white makeup on. Oh, this isn't fitting right, and wham, there you are.
Whoops.
But memorable.
It is honestly easy to forget sometimes where you have makeup, or you know, if you've done anything. Like, and I have to watch this all the time. If I've done anything around my eyes, to be like, oh, I really want to rub my eyes. No. I will look like a raccoon if I do that.
That would be interesting, though. Wonder Woman, you didn't get much sleep last night, did you?
Although I could have gotten away with it when I did Harley Quinn, because I actually did do the Arkham Asylum version of Harley Quinn, so it had like the big black splotches anyways. So
okay.
That one I could have gotten away with.
Now, when you go out to conventions and such, obviously you get asked for your picture quite a bit, correct? Mm-hmm. Do you ever catch people taking your picture without permission?
I haven't caught them doing it. I'm sure it's happened once or twice. But by and large, people seem to get, at least at the conventions I've been, people seem to get the etiquette of requesting that you can take a picture of somebody. And because, you know, people, whenever they see me, because I think that I look good. I also don't think I pass for female. For one thing, I'm too damn tall. I'm 6 feet before I put heels on. So just that alone is usually enough for people to take a second look. And on a close inspection, I don't think I pass 100%, but I still think I look good. But that means that people either tend to keep an eye on me, but also keep like a 10-foot distance, or get really excited and like come up and, you know, want to say something or want to take a picture. And I always do appreciate that. And it was something I quickly picked up on whenever I wanted to get a picture of someone else. And also because I'm a little bit of a narcissist. By and large, I like to get selfies with people, and it's pretty rare that I'll just take a picture of them on their own without me in it as well. I have to be really bowled over by an outfit to do that. But yeah, at least I have found that people seem to understand that is proper etiquette. And also, by and large, thankfully, most people know to ask before they put their hands on you, usually for the purposes of the picture. Ask, is it okay if I put my arm around you? Is it okay if I lock my arm with yours? Things like that. Most people know to ask, which is also a good thing because, the cosplay is not consent is a thing that has had to be hammered home in the last few years because it wasn't always properly practiced.
Yeah, that's. I'm really happy to hear that you have positive experiences like that. But yeah, luckily it has not happened in any of the conventions I've been to, limited number that they are. But just the idea of someone dressing up is, oh, you can do whatever you want to me. It doesn't compute,
Well, I mean, fundamentally, it harkens back to, and I think it's something that I'm really glad it's getting hammered on, and I think it's part of the reason we don't see it, or at least I haven't seen it in person. And that's not to say that it doesn't happen, because I know that it does. But like the entire mentality that kind of spawned that is the whole, well, look at how she was dressed. She was asking for it, which as a society we seem to understand that's not okay. So,
yeah,
having moved on from that, we can kind of extend out, and therefore, having a skimpy costume is also not asking for it.
Right. I mean, it's and it might just be my upbringing or my mindset, but I've always looked at it as someone is dressing up for themselves and or their significant other. Me being in the same room, I'm not part of that equation at all. Nice to look at in most cases. I have no problem with that. In fact, my wife will now, we understand each other to the point where she'll nudge me and say, hey, look at that one. Or I'll point out something to her. Hey, check him out. But that's just because they're there, they're in the same room, you're going to look at them. But put your hands on without permission, catcall them, something like that, it makes my brain hurt,
Yeah. And I speak as someone who does go, and I am dressing for myself, but I'm not going to lie, I'm also dressing for attention. I've worked photo booths at some conventions. It is my hope to be noticed, but you still have to be respectful in any case. And I think obviously it probably goes without saying that by and large these sorts of offenses are committed by men against women. However, I kind of want to discuss the flip of that too, because the one and only time that I have been touched inappropriately against, without consent, was by a woman, and by a woman who could tell that I was, that I biologically am male. And the standard applies both ways. It's not okay because you're a woman touching a guy. As a society, we don't frown on that as much. We think, oh, all guys like attention from women, but without consent, no, really not. So I feel the need to point that one out, not because women do it more, they don't, but, and also having talked to some other people, the incidents where it's been a woman that's done inappropriate touching, it's very clear that they have never been told that that's not okay. And just because it's kind of assumed either that it is okay or that, oh, that doesn't happen, so you don't have to mention it. And I kind of do, because the only time it ever happened to me, that was what it was.
Yeah, because just the era that you and I grew up in, we're a little ways apart in age, but same generation, I would say. We were, brought up with the idea of, well, boys have to go and sow their oats, but girls, you had better stay right here at home, not do anything.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
The dichotomy there. And it seems like that, the male mindset from that era and from the eras before has always been, well, I can do whatever I want. I'm a guy. I'm supposed to go do this. Luckily, we're moving beyond that. But on the reverse, I'm going to assume, I don't have any practical experience like this, but I'm going to assume that there were some females that repression just, it overtook them, and the pendulum swung too far the other way, ending up in your case.
I'm not sure I'd go that far. In my mind, I think it's much more a case of honestly feeding off that same thing that you said, the assumption, oh, guys, they go and sow their wild oats. Well, a logical extension of that is guys always want it.
True. Yeah.
Therefore, it makes it okay for a woman to touch a man because, of course, he's going to want it. He's a guy.
Mm-hmm.
Guys always want it. So I don't think it's necessarily like a rebellious thing against having been oppressed, although I'm sure it could be theoretically. I think it's much more this assumption that guys always want that kind of attention from women. And it's not a hard leap from oh, yeah, what all guys want to, oh, well, if they all want that, cool. That it'll be okay for me to touch them because I'm a woman.
Yeah, I see your point there. Yeah. Okay, let's get back to a more happy version of this topic.
Gladly.
Now, you've done cosplay more than I have, both with the burlesque and at conventions.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say was your favorite one to do? Not necessarily the one that you felt looked the best, but the one that you got the most gratification out of dressing up as.
I'm going to cheat and give you two answers because it's kind of a tie for different reasons.
Okay.
The first would be Wonder Woman. Because when I did her, we had a photo booth for the Green Mountain Cabaret, and so we had which is a burlesque troupe that I am associated with. I do hosting with them, and we had a number of members at the booth at various times of the day, as different cosplay characters for people to get their pictures taken with. So, like, we had someone, the new Ghostbusters had just come out, so we had one of the members as Holtzman. Which was Kate McKinnon's character from that. We had, what did we have? Oh, we had Mystique. We had this was a dark one. We had somebody as Lisbeth Salander from The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. But I was there as Wonder Woman, and the experience of people seeing me, and keep in mind this was also my first time at a convention. Because I'd only done it like in performance up to that point. The experience of people seeing me and coming up to me and wanting a picture with me was a really empowering thing. But by far, there was this moment, this mother and this little girl, they're coming down the aisle. And the girl was no way was she more than 5. I think she was 4, actually. But her mother kind of taps the little girl and points at me. This girl's face lights up. It practically explodes. And she comes running over to me, and she hugs onto my leg and looks up at me and goes, "I love your show."
Wow.
And oh my God, that was the single most rewarding experience that I've ever had associated with cosplay. I don't think it'll ever be topped. But there were a few other kids that came over as well, including some young boys who were really excited to pose with me as well, and that was all really fun. The one that I have the most sort of personal pride in, and the one that I was happiest with more in the abstract, that was when I did Poison Ivy. And that was partially because that was the first time I got crafty at all, because I'm not an arts and crafts person. I usually don't make my own stuff. So yeah, I don't buy, bag costumes. Like the Wonder Woman stuff was a combination of several pieces from several different people that I gotten off of Etsy, and things like that. But when I did Poison Ivy, I didn't buy a ready-made costume. I bought various pieces. I bought a green corset. I bought, an appropriate wig. I got some green fishnets. I got heels that were way higher than I thought they were based on the picture, but I still had them. I thought they were 4 inches. They were 5. So I had those. But I have bought these sort of green sleeves. They were sort of fingerless, and it was just this, it went up about to the elbow. And I ordered them, I think, off of Amazon, and in the picture, it had leaves on it. Not a ton, but it had like a little smattering of them. When that arrived, it had like 3 leaves on it.
Oh, wow.
I'm looking at this going, this is crap. And for a half second, I was like, I got to find something else. But then I thought, no, wait a minute. So instead, what I did was I bought, and I guess you normally buy these like to decorate, I don't know, like a wedding or maybe for a set for something. But I bought these long strings of ivy vines, pulled the leaves off them, and then glued them all up and down these gloves, these sleeves, completely covering them. So I had nothing but leaves going up the arm. So I did that on both of those, and then actually ended up doing the same with the green sort of underwear that I was wearing as well. So that was the first time that I got crafty. And the other thing that I did, and this was like a crazy cheap last minute decision solution, but it looked really good, was when I put the fishnets on, right before I pulled them up, I just kind of like dropped in it and sprinkled some extra of the leaves that I had, and then pulled it up, and they just kind of stuck there, and so that they were kind of up the side of my leg in a sort of not particularly organized but sort of oddly organic pattern, and people kept asking me, how'd you do that? I'm like, I just dropped them in. They just looked like that. I know, right?
It's completely random, and it works.
Yeah. So that was the one that I was most happy with it, like just looking at myself and going, oh, damn, yes. And sort of taking pride in actually having made some of it to a degree, because that was something I had avoided for a long, long time.
Yeah, I can understand that. I'm not very good making clothing at all. Anything I need made, I get my wife to do it.
Yeah, I only started. I hadn't sewn anything in my life until last year when I did Kaylee, because I had to sew patches onto the jumpsuit, and then I did Fix It Felix. I had to sew the patch on the hat and on the shirt.
Well, again, baby steps.
yeah, little bits.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, like I said, I don't have a huge amount of cosplay experience. Just the things I mentioned, and the one. I guess it would count because it was in public. A couple of years ago, my friends and I got together, and before my wife got her current job, which basically derailed the whole family schedule because she works nights now. I was getting up early in the morning and going running. just because I was a fat bastard and I needed to lose weight. So I got involved in some 5Ks, and the first one I did was the Rocky Run because I live near Philadelphia, and that seems kind of a necessity. But a couple years ago, a friend of mine, Adam Worth, who I do the Quantum Cast with, he was saying, hey, this sounds cool. Why don't we try and get together and we'll do something? And I came across this one. It's called the Totally Awesome 80s Run. And they would give out prizes for the best team because you would have a theme together. So we decided we're going to go as 80s wrestlers. So we had Adam was dressed up as Ric Flair, complete with wig.
Nice.
Our friend Rob was dressed up as Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Our friend Frank was the Brooklyn Brawler, which is perfect for him because he's Yankees fan anyway. My wife was dressed as Miss Elizabeth, and I was dressed as Macho Man Randy Savage.
Somebody had to do it.
Well, I got the beard. So I actually grew my beard in, and this is the most effort I've gone to, is specifically growing my beard in to look like Macho Man's beard. I got the bandana, the sunglasses, the shirt, everything. And I had somewhat of a similar situation to you, because after the run is over, right? And I'm dead. Because I'm not built to be a runner, but I do it anyway. And this guy comes up to me and says, hey, can I get a picture with you? My brother loves Macho Man. All right. I'm here for a run. Whatever. Go for it. And believe it or not, I actually won Best Male Costume.
Nice.
Because no one else was willing to go up against me. And I don't understand why. They called out, okay, let's get the Best Male Costume. I said, oh, what the heck, I'm dressed like this anyway. I walked up. No one else. I didn't think I looked that good, really. But, hey, whatever.
Apparently you scared off everybody else.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'll throw a picture of our group in the chat, and you can tell me.
Oh, okay.
Assuming this thing's going to work on me. But it was fun. That was the main thing about it, is everything that we're talking about is for fun. You know?
Yes.
And that's something I think a lot of people could possibly... It could get lost in it. But everything we're doing, going to conventions, doing this run, whatever, is just to have a good time. Yes, part of it is, hey, look at me. Because if you don't want people to look at you, you wouldn't go out dressed like that in the first place. But
no, you do what I do 80% of the time. You'd slap on a hoodie and keep your head down.
Yeah, but it's it's just having a good time, getting more into something you enjoy. And anymore, I go to conventions and I'm wearing my Two True Freaks shirt just because I'm promoting the network and promote my show, my blog, etc. But if I felt the need to do it, I'd get dressed up again. The perfect example is my daughter, who is 9, gonna be 10 in August, which is a really, really frightening thought. But she loves getting dressed up. Halloween, one of her favorite things. When we first went to Walt Disney World, she got dressed up at... we went to the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, and she got the full princess outfit and everything. Next day, went to the Magic Kingdom for the first time. She wore the dress. She said, I got the dress, the hair, everything. I'm going. So, there have been times where I've gone out with her in a matching costume. So, if she's dressed up as a princess, I will go dressed as a knight. And So if she ever wants to go to a convention like that, we can do a whole family costuming thing. We're perfectly happy with that. Because it's fun. I've seen families out dressed as the Incredibles, dressed as the Avengers. There was one family this past weekend, all dressed as Street Fighter characters. The husband was Ken, the wife was Cammy, and...
Cammy's on my to-do list.
Oh, yeah? my wife actually pointed out to me and said, you see the one with the leotard upper butt? What's going on there? I said, oh, that's Cammy. She's from Street Fighter.
I'm not gonna lie. I got very happy when she did that particular victory pose.
Most of us did.
Yeah.
But everyone was just having fun, and any time, and I'm gonna get off my soapbox in a minute, but anytime you go out and make someone's good time feel like they're having a bad time, you're doing it wrong. So lay off them. And that is our preachy moment for the episode.
There you go. Now, let's backtrack just a tiny bit, because I'm looking at this picture, and that is a legit Macho Man. I'm not gonna lie. I am actually not excessively surprised that no one else wanted to get on that stage.
Yeah, I need to get back down to that weight at some point, but I'm not too far above it. I can still wear the outfit.
Well, there you go. As long as it still, fits mostly.
Yeah, well,
then you're doing good.
Yeah, I went from, and this is a completely separate topic, but I went from a XX t-shirt size to a large, and have stayed at large since. So I'm calling that a victory.
I would agree. Good for you.
So I just need to get back to the running thing, and just brilliant person I am. I signed up for one in the beginning of June for work, so that'll be fun. I can embarrass myself in front of my coworkers. Yeah,
when the guy who runs the office 5K every year comes around, I try to disappear.
Well, luckily, most of the people in the office aren't. They're in shape, but they're not runners. Most of us, I would say it is actually most of us. When the weather's nice, like it is currently, we'll go out at lunchtime because we have an hour lunch and walk. And so I'll do 3 miles at lunchtime just to get exercise in, because I don't have, with my wife working nights, she gets home in the morning, I leave. I mean, literally, she pulls in the driveway, I walk out of the house. So I don't have time to do it any other time, because after work I gotta pick the kid up, get home, make dinner. We maybe watch some TV. She goes to work, and then I have to deal with everything else. Do the dishes, get, next day stuff ready, make sure the kid's doing her homework, stuff like that. So I don't have time other than lunch at work.
No, that's about the only time I get out these days either. So understood.
You're in a lot better shape than I am, though. Well,
see, the difference is I'm sliding. I used to be in better shape than I am. I was going to say trying. I haven't been trying that hard. I've been wanting to lose about the same 20 pounds for 3 years. So, but it's one of the few things I miss about living in New York, was I used to take the stairs. And I worked on the 28th floor. And I took my lunch later than everybody else, so I had no one to talk to. So I used to take the elevator down and to take the stairs actually up to the top floor, which was the 34th, take the elevator back down and do them again. By the time we moved out of New York, I could do it 3 times in a half hour.
Wow. That's good. That'd keep your legs toned for sure.
Oh, my legs were amazing. My legs are still pretty good. They're if you're a burlesque performer, it helps to know like the one thing that's like, oh, this is the part that I linger on the reveal of. For me, it's my legs. But even as much as my legs are good now, they were killer when I was in New York.
All right, well, I mean, we've gotten into weight loss and exercise and everything.
That's usually the point where maybe we hit everything we had to say.
Probably, yes. So, by way of wrapping up, let me just say, first of all, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate your point of view on this.
Thanks for having me.
And also, congratulations on your successful Kickstarter to get your book published.
Yes! Hooray! So I suppose at this point, since the Kickstarter is wrapped up, this is plug for thing that will be available later. I wrote a book that's going to be called Skirting Gender, which is about my life as a gender fluid person and also sort of offering advice, which is something I've been doing on YouTube for years, putting up advice videos for people who aren't as far along in their gender exploration as I am. A lot of practical advice, makeup tips, how to, more feminine hand gestures, or how to sit like a woman if it's not something you're used to, or sorry, I shouldn't say like a woman, in a classically feminine fashion. And things like that. So it's a book that is a mix of advice as well as my own personal life experiences. And the Kickstarter was for me to be able to afford to hire an editor so that I can self-publish the thing, because I shopped it around publishers for a few years. Nobody bit. I said, screw it. I'll put it out myself. So that will be available. I'm aiming to have that available by September, but definitely by the end of the year. Excellent.
I'm sure that there will be a high demand for that, because your Kickstarter funded pretty damn quick, if I remember right.
It was fully funded about halfway through the campaign.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was exciting and terrifying. It's like, oh, great. So now there's people who have already paid money for this that I have to answer to. Oh boy.
No pressure though.
No pressure. I quantified dollar value pressure.
All right. Well, you mentioned YouTube. Do you want to plug your YouTube channel?
Sure. It doesn't get as actively updated as it used to, but I do still update it, and there's a huge back catalog on it. So honestly, if you just look for Vera Wilde, the last name spelled W-Y-L-D-E, because I had to do it really pretentiously. If you look for Vera Wilde, you will find me on YouTube, on Twitter. I have a Facebook page for myself as a model and a performer, and I'm on Instagram. So there are plenty of ways to find me if you're curious about what I actually look like in some of these outfits.
Oh, I'm sure that people listening to this are going to go right there just to see the pictures of Wonder Woman.
That you've got to dig back a little while for that one, because that was a couple of years ago. My Sith stuff is pretty current though on Instagram and Flickr.
Okay, cool. All right, everyone, make sure you go out and find Vera and all the great stuff she does. And again, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate your input.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and we'll see you next time, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Hammer Podcasts. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to send an email to gene@thehammerstrikes.com. If you like what you've heard, please visit the Patreon page, which is located at patreon.com/thehammerstrikes, and consider becoming a sponsor of the show. Please be sure to check out the Hammer Strikes on Facebook, Google+, Twitter, and YouTube. The Hammer Podcast is a proud part of the Two True Freaks Internet Radio Network.